can practically have bots sitting and making as many calls as possible, and I can give instructions to it to do it in a manner it should do. And hence, this part of privacy is very important, and protection of secure data is very important. Coming to next, that today I can't tell you which of my data is where. So they say that you have got right to access as your third right. Now what do you mean by right to access? Right to access is any company I can request that I want to know what my data is lying in your organization and for what purpose it is lying and with which all third party vendors you have shared my data with. See, अभी क्या होता था? मैंने डेटा दिया आपको, आपने दिया इनको, इनके बाद इन्होंने इनको दिया, इनको कोई मतलब नहीं है खुशबू जैन से, इनका कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किससे था? इनके साथ में. He feels I can do anything now with it. I have no contractual liability or understanding with Khushbu Jain. And I also don't know who he is. So law is saying that, boss, my liability, my understanding is with company A, who is the first point of contact of mine, who is taking my data. Contract is signed between us. Even if there is no contract, there is a data fiduciary liability that comes. The first point of contact who takes your data is your data fiduciary. The second and the third entity are the one whose responsibility the first company will have to take. But how do I know tomorrow when his company gets breached? I have not shared with him, how do I know? That's why they're saying that liability comes on him, so that he will make sure when he shares with him, he makes sure that his contracts are in place, because he will have to share information of company A, who has shared with me. He has to share information of company B. And tomorrow when I say, I need to recall my consent, which I have given, gets recalled here also and here also. So that Bajaj Alliance who's calling us every day, despite saying no, 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 stops calling us when we say no to Bajaj Alliance. The 10 call centers who have been given the numbers to convert, they also understand that I have exercised my right to recall. Stop calling me. That data is no more yours. So bringing that transparency, leading to accountability is what they're saying, that right to access, where I can request any entity who is there with me that tell me my data, for what purpose you're using that data and which all entities you have shared my data with for what purpose. Uske baad mein you will have an understanding whether you want to exercise your right to recall or right to erasure, which is your next right, or right to correction, which is your another right. What do you mean by right to correction? Correction practically everybody imposes, but in a minute manner, that I can request, as the name suggests, I can request that my data need to be corrected. I am no more Miss, I want to be called as Mrs. I no more reside at this location, it is this. Or let's say there's some error data which is lying with you, it's no more true. It can be anything. Correction can be any form, not just Miss to Mrs. and address and this and that. It can be 20 other things or everything possible that you have of mine. I can request that I need to correct my data, and you as a company will be obligated to correct my data. When I say company, it is every entity who is taking my data. It has nothing to do with company. It can be LLP, it can be private partnership, it can be a proprietorship, it can be a private limited or a public limited, anybody. It can be government as well. If you're not notified by the central government for a specific task. There also your limit is only limited to consent. Rest other things you will also have to comply with. So, right to correction ke baad aata hai right to erasure. And it says that if you don't have right to be forgotten, you don't have any right. Kaisa right hai? Aadha adhura right hai na? I'll give you one example. This was the case that came to us. He's a TV celebrity. He was caught drunk and drive. And I think you will have 20 more examples here that somebody has done something and it has been recorded, and whole year or life it keeps revolving around you, right? Something has happened somewhere, heat of the moment, something you have taken as an action, recorded, and that keeps revolving around you. But this case which I had was a TV celebrity guy. He was being caught drunk and drive. Now while he was caught, those pictures were clicked. And we all know how those pictures will come in the night when, coming out of the car, and those pictures, and it became like so not unhappy pictures if you have to put across. It was everywhere. He admitted, and he was imprisonment, and he got his whatever timeline for it, and he went in the jail and came out. एक क्राइम किया, उसकी पनिशमेंट मिल गई, बाहर आ गए. फिर आया उनका कुछ साल बाद में कि हमको अब शादी करनी है. शादी में जब अरेंज मैरिज के लिए जहाँ पे भी वो जहाँ से थे, तो फर्स्ट पिक्चर व्हेन यू गूगल एनी सेलिब्रिटी, you wanna Google it. First 20 pages is that drunk and drive wala picture. he had real difficulty in the marriage part of it. When he was being, and not marriage also, the one girl when he had it, the whole family to extended family to extended family to friends, everybody want to know, right? You search. Pictures used to come, just those pictures, and it became little unfair for him. He's like, it's okay, what happened, happened. When he came to us was the time when he wanted to have an admission of his son in the school. And that's where the problem started coming in, where the admission became a problem. And he said, will I be punished so many times, and if I am punished, will my family will be punished every time that this happens? And Constitution Article 20 says that one person cannot be punished twice for the same crime. Now this punishment is more dangerous. This is coming everywhere, and not to one person but to whole family and family and family. And that's where we applied to the court, and court granted us that right to be forgotten wala part, that the data should be deleted. But then we realized that we have got at least minimum of 15 to 20 judgments in the last 3 years from different courts. But it is not an absolute, not a precedent. In the judgment only they write this not to be taken as a precedent, this is individual. So every time for little things of yours, do I have to go to the court to say that right to be, right to be forgotten need to be exercised? And that's where the whole problem was coming in. So DPDP Act also talks about right to erasure as your another right. That once the data is gone doesn't mean it is gone. You can exercise your right to erasure as well. This comes from the very beautiful law which was there in the CCPA, that is your California law, personal law, where they say that up till 16 or 18, I'm forgetting the year, every child who's online, or every parent who has got their child online, once they attain that 18, they can practically have right to be forgotten exercised. Why? Because uske pehle tak unka khud ka to, they are not the decision makers. Somebody else has taken a decision. CCPA recognizes that. And all these social media platforms practically does that. Huh? When it comes to India only, they have all the problems in life that we can't do this, we can't do that, we don't have infrastructures in place or systems in place. But there they do it. Please don't pardon me if somebody is from the tech giants. But that's the truth. And that's where India also said that we need to have this right to erasure embedded into it. Because there is no privacy, it doesn't have ownership. कैसे हुआ जब आपका ownership ही नहीं है उस पे तो? All we are talking about is ownership of your own data, right? Your data, you are the owner. But if I can't exercise erasure, there is no owner. So they said right to erasure is there. But right to erasure also has a lot of layers to it. What do you mean by that? Now can I say that I am being, there is a 3 FIR on me. And there is a judgment. When I was being imprisonment or there's this High Court going on. Can I exercise High Court when I go to Supreme Court, High Court to delete all my data? Right to erasure. Or can I say that all those 3 FIRs need to be deleted, not to be shared anywhere? So let's say tomorrow when I have a passport or issues like that, you can't share all those details. Can you do that? Huh? Or can I say that I can call one of the telcos and say delete all my IPDR and CDR? I'm your customer. I have right to erasure. I have nothing to do with anybody. I will just call Vodafone or Airtel or Jio and I tell them, please delete my data. मेरे CDR और IPDR आप सारे delete कर दे पिछले. कल जाके कोई क्राइम होता है, आप एज अ लॉ एनफोर्समेंट एजेंसी जाएंगे, वो बोलेगा इन्होंने तो राइट टू इरेजर एक्सरसाइज कर दिया है. So erasure also has a layers and layers of it. You need to understand. What do you mean by erasure? Erasure is that I can request for an erasure provided that data is not required under any law to be retained. जैसे PMLA बोलता है 5 साल और 7 साल के लिए कुछ डेटा को रखना है. PMLA practically applies to every entity. Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Then आधार बोलता है कि आधार का कुछ डेटा 6 महीने रखना है, कुछ 1 साल, कुछ 2 साल. फिर आपका रेगुलेटर भी बहुत सारी चीजें बोलता है. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल आरबीआई के खुद के नॉर्म्स है रिटेंशन के कि ये डेटा मेंटेन करना है. इनकम टैक्स के कुछ नॉर्म्स है जो 8 साल के हैं, कुछ परपेचुइटी के लिए है कि पूरे साल पूरी जिंदगी आपको मेंटेन करने हैं. ऐसे करके बहुत सारे लोगों के अलग अलग नॉर्म्स है, एक्ट के प्लस रेगुलेटर्स के प्लस डीपीडीपी एक्ट के रूल्स में भी बोला गया है कि साल भर तक आपको कुछ डेटा मेंटेन करके रखना है. तो ये जितने भी नॉर्म्स हैं इसके ओवर एंड अबव आपको इम्प्लीमेंट करना है. जैसे आधार ने बोला है 2 साल तक डेटा को रखना है, या इन्होंने बोला है कि डिस्पाइट लेट्स से मैं आपके साथ एसबीआई में थी, अब मैं कोटक में मूव हो गई हूँ, तो मैं एसबीआई को बोल रही हूँ बॉस मैं तुम्हारी कस्टमर नहीं हूँ, मेरा सारा डेटा डिलीट कर दो. और कोटक फिर भी आपकी केवाईसी रखेगा और एसबीआई फिर भी आपकी केवाईसी रखेगा. क्यों? क्योंकि आरबीआई आस्क्ड देम टू डू दैट फॉर सर्टेन पीरियड. बट दैट डजंट मीन इट विल कंटिन्यू फॉरएवर. 2 साल का नॉर्म है, 2 साल के बाद में ही विल डिलीटेड. तो लेट्स से 12 नवंबर 2024 को खुशबू जैन की रिक्वेस्ट आई थी, वो 2026 12 नवंबर को उसको एक्सरसाइज कर देंगे डिलीट करने के लिए. बट टू डू ऑल दीज थिंग्स, और वो डिलीशन सिर्फ इनका नहीं होगा। एसबीआई ने लेट्स से शेयर किया था ताज से, एसबीआई ने शेयर किया था विस्तारा एयरलाइन से, सॉरी एयर इंडिया एयरलाइन से। क्यों? क्योंकि उनके ऑफर्स चलते थे और मैंने वो ऑप्ट किए थे। तो सिर्फ मेरी तरफ से डिलीट नहीं होगा, उनको बताना होगा, विस्तारा को भी, एयर इंडिया को भी उनको बताना होगा, ताज को भी, और 50 और एंटिटीज जिनको आप यूज करते हो, या फिर आपका जो जितने भी आपके थर्ड पार्टी वेंडर्स है जो आपको हेल्प करते हैं। लेट्स से कोई आपको हेल्प करता है टेक्नोलॉजी में, कोई आपको एडवाइजरी में हेल्प करता है, जिनके पास एक्सेस है डेटा का, सबको डिलीट करना होगा। अब लेट्स से मैंने तो कर दिया एक्सरसाइज, इन्होंने भी डिलीट कर दिया, एयर इंडिया ने डिलीट नहीं किया, किसको पकड़े? इनको। ये बोलेंगे मैंने एयर इंडिया को बताया था, फिर एयर इंडिया ने डिलीट नहीं किया, अब एयर इंडिया की गलती है, तो वो लड़ेंगे और अपनी लाइबिलिटी ट्रांसफर करेंगे एयर इंडिया पे। बट अगर इन्होंने एयर इंडिया को बताया ही नहीं है, तो पूरी एक्सरसाइज करने के बाद में भी 50 करोड़ तक की पेनल्टी पे करेंगे ये। अब ये जितने राइट्स मैंने आपको बताए, इसके बाद में एक और राइट आता है, which is a right to nominate. Now what do you mean by right to nominate? That is one of the right which is there just in India. No other countries usually have this right. They say that data is something which is oil, which is an asset, and we agree. So they say that as an asset, you can now nominate somebody on your behalf in the event of death or in the incapacity or unsoundness of mind. अगर ऐसा कुछ होता है तो आप किसी को नॉमिनेट करते हैं। वो नॉमिनेट, वो बेनिफिशियरी वाला नॉमिनेट नहीं है कि पेंशन फंड में पैसे मिलेंगे या फिर एलआईसी में पैसे मिलेंगे या फिर बैंक अकाउंट का जो बेनिफिशियरी है, तो वो बैंक अकाउंट्स के वो होंगे। बेनिफिशियरी कोई और हो सकता है, नॉमिनेशन किसी और को मिल सकता है। नॉमिनेट वाला गाय को आप बोल सकते हो बाद में कि यार मेरे मरने के बाद में डिलीट करते हैं मेरी सारी डेटा, या फिर उसका जो बेनिफिट आते हैं, बहुत सारे फाइनेंशियल बेनिफिट्स आते हैं, यू यूटिलाइज इट और यू कंटिन्यू व्हाटएवर यू वांट टू डू। That is your right to nominate, but that can be done at the event of incapacity of mind and unsoundness of mind, or the event of death, and that can be done right now. You can put it across right now that I nominate this person for this, this, this. It has been said that by 2045, there will be more dead people online than the people who are alive. पढ़िए वो profiles तो पढ़िए, उनका data है, तो there is nobody to say anything and do about it. Anyways, now the last one of yours is right to grievance redress. Grievance redressal, as the name suggests, if I have any grievance, they need to redress it. होता ये कि सारी entities अब because of the globalization and the way we are, हम कितनी complaints करने कुछ होता नहीं है, तो they say that taking the data, grievance also has to be taken care of. So that is also a right of a person. They will have to solve it. Now ये जितने rights थे, consent, recall your consent, erasure, correction, nominate to grievance redressal, ये जितने राइट्स हैं, ये इंडिविजुअली इन पूरे राइट्स की सॉल्व करने की टाइमलाइन आपके पास है 90 दिन। 90 दिन के अंदर आप और आपके जितने थर्ड पार्टी वेंडर्स और जितने भी इन हाउस एक्सटर्नल रिसोर्सेज हैं, जो भी है, सबको एक्सरसाइज करना होगा और इम्प्लीमेंट करना होगा। अभी हर राइट का नॉन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन पे 50 तक करोड़ तक की पेनल्टी लग सकती है इंडिपेंडेंटली। मतलब राइट टू इरेजर नहीं किया है, 50 करोड़ तक की पेनल्टी, सब में तक लगा देना, अप टू है ये सारा। राइट टू इरेजर के बाद में राइट टू नॉमिनेट भी नहीं है, राइट टू ये भी नहीं है, राइट टू ये भी नहीं है, 50। I'm not scaring, but it's true. Now let's say I come to your website. आपने कंसेंट का वहां पे लिखा ही नहीं है, और वो कंसेंट को, हाँ एक और चीज दी है, उन्होंने बोला है जो आपका 8th शेड्यूल ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, उसकी जो भाषाएं हैं, वो सारी भाषाओं में आप कंसेंट हमसे लो। बट अगर लेट्स से आपका ऑफिस महाराष्ट्र में है, तो आप बोलो कि मैंने मराठी और इंग्लिश में ले लिया, कोई मतलब नहीं है। मैं कर्नाटका में हूं, मैं आपकी कस्टमर हूं, तो मुझे मेरी भाषा में आना चाहिए। आपका हेड ऑफिस या कॉर्पोरेट ऑफिस या आपके एग्जिस्टेंस से कोई मतलब नहीं है। अगर आपकी ऑडियंस जहां पर है, आपका यूजर बेस जहां का है, उसको उस भाषा में मिलना चाहिए। तो 8th शेड्यूल ऑफ ए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हैज दोज लैंग्वेजेस, वो सारी लैंग्वेजेस एम्बेडेड होनी चाहिए, कंसेंट में वो होना चाहिए। अब लेट्स से कल मैं जब आती हूँ, तो ये जो सारी चीजें हैं, उसका अब नेक्स्ट लेयर है। ये तो आपका कंप्लायंस हो गया, बेसिक ऑब्लिगेशंस, फिर सिक्योरिटी और उस पे आते हैं। बट जब सिक्योरिटी की बात करते हैं ना, तो बहुत लंबा काम हो जाता है कि वेदर सिक्योर ब्रीच आपकी तरफ से हुआ, somebody will come, check, audit, everything. This compliance is clearly visible. I come to you, you don't take my consent, it's visible. You don't have an option on your website, or easily, they say that it should be as easily exercised as easily you have taken my data. ऐसा नहीं कि घुमा घुमा के तुम बोलोगे अब मुझे एक रिक्वेस्ट भेजो, फिर वहां से वहां, एंड दैट्स वेयर इट ऑल गेट्स निगेटेड। हम बोलेंगे थक ही गए, अब छोड़ के आई एक्सेस करना है। नहीं, वो होता है जितनी आसानी से आपने डेटा लिया था उतनी आसानी से आपको उसको रिकॉल और वो सारे एक्सरसाइज करने के राइट्स होने चाहिए, और उन भाषाओं में। तो नाउ इट्स सो इजी फॉर मी वेयर आई डोंट हैव टू एंटर इनटू योर सिस्टम्स। मुझे सिर्फ बैठ के चेक करना है कि भाई ये सारे एक्सरसाइजिंग राइट्स है या नहीं है। हर इसके नहीं होने पे सामने विजिबल है, कोई एविडेंस नहीं है, एविडेंस की जरूरत नहीं है, सामने दिखता है कि आप कहाँ ले रहे हो कंसेंट, कैसे ले रहे हो। 50 करोड़ फॉर ईच ऑफ द राइट्स दैट कैन कम अक्रॉस। एक तो हो गया नहीं लेना, और एक हो गया इंप्लीमेंट भी नहीं करना। रिकॉल का कंसेंट का ऑप्शन है, मैंने आपको दे दी, आपने रिकॉर्ड कर ली और उसको एक्सरसाइज नहीं किया, तो सब लेवल पर है, नहीं मांगना और नहीं करना एग्जीक्यूट, दोनों पे इंप्लीमेंटेशन का प्रॉब्लम है, और दोनों पे वो 50 करोड़ तक की पेनल्टी लग सकती है। इट इज एप्लीकेबल टू गवर्नमेंट, प्लीज डोंट बी इन द पार्ट ऑफ। मैं एक्चुअली वो Q&A पे आ रही थी तब मैं ये क्वेश्चंस पूछती। अगर ऐसा लग रहा है कि हम तो सरकार हैं और सरकार को छूट मिली है, तो छूट नहीं मिली है। यू आर वन ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट डेटा holding entities in the country.
Is there a concept of a blanket consent given? For instance, I am using, I have a particular reason to use the data. For instance, हमने across Maharashtra agriculture department ने सारे farmers का data along with the land holding. Now I have released distribution to you. I want to use that data. So the person has given the consent to the agriculture department to use it. Is there a concept of a blanket permission whereby the person can tell us कि for every government benefit this data can be used? Is there a concept?
So you can do benefit part very well. Now that you can take it, but the problem that comes is वो benefit के बाद में जैसे वो किसी और purpose के लिए use होता है. Benefit is one purpose.
No, if I use the term government benefit, उसमें revenue department भी आ सकता है, agriculture department भी आ सकता है.
Absolutely fine, you can do that. You can do that.
So we can have a blanket.
You can have blanket, but blanket cannot be ambiguous.
No, suppose I say.
I understood that you can do it.
I have 10 departments, and Bertie, your data will be used for by these departments for benefit purposes. Can we do that?
Yes, you can do that.
So that
But
puts us in the safe zone?
yeah, that puts you in the safe zone at the first level. But the moment I exercise my right to consent wale point fit is perfect. The moment I exercise my right to access is where you will have to give me detail. You have shared with excise, you have shared with agriculture department, you have shared with this department for this purpose. तो वो आपके रिकॉर्ड कीपिंग में अंदर होना चाहिए. The day I exercise, not everybody will exercise right to access, and not everything has to be out there in your website or everything. Consent can be taken up like that, but access where you will have to tell me details. That can be independent, that I ask for my access. Once you verify me that I am your customer, the same person, is where you will ask me that what do you want. I'll say I want to exercise my right to access or erasure or correction. If I do access, then you will have to tell me what data, what purpose, which entity. There you will have to go categorical कि मैंने इतना डेटा इस एंटिटी को शेयर किया था, इस बेनिफिट के लिए, ये शेयर किया था इस बेनिफिट के लिए. तो आपकी इंटरनल सिस्टम्स में आपके पास में क्लैरिटी होनी चाहिए कि आपके पास में 50 एंटिटीज है जिसके साथ में आप डेटा शेयर करते हो इंटरनली, डिपार्टमेंट वाइज और मिनिस्ट्री वाइज और समवेयर एल्स. यू विल हैव टू हैव दैट रिकॉर्ड कीपिंग इन प्लेस टू हैव दैट क्लैरिटी, प्लस यू नीड टू हैव कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स इन प्लेस. बिकॉज अगर आपने उनसे शेयर किया, लेट्स से यू हैव शेयर्ड विद अनदर डिपार्टमेंट, नाउ दैट डिपार्टमेंट आल्सो हैज अ डेटा. That data will be coming from, let's say, you and from another department. Now they have got a bigger data. Now that data has no name, no, it has come from her or come from him. That data is data. अब वो बहुत बड़ा डेटा हो गया है. अब वो डेटा की ओनरशिप किसकी है? मेरी है. बट मैं तो फिड्यूशरी हुई नहीं, बिकॉज मैंने तो इनसे भी लिया, इनसे भी लिया, इनसे भी लिया. और वो जो आप और आम जनता उसका मेरे से कोई लेना देना नहीं था. That's where they will have to have a clarity over here. अगर मैं इसको यूज करती हूँ किसी और नए पर्पस के लिए, तो आप ये भी कर सकते हो कि मैं अगर कुछ और उसका यूटिलाइजेशन करना चाहती हूँ या मेरी लाइबिलिटी और बढ़ानी है आपको, तो आप एज अ डिपार्टमेंट बोल सकते हो मुझे कि बॉस, आई हैव गिवन यू फॉर दिस पर्पस व्हिच आई हैव टोल्ड माय डेटा प्रिंसिपल्स, यू टेक फ्रेश कंसेंट एंड हैव अ रिकॉर्ड ऑफ दैट कंसेंट विथ यू, so that that customer directly comes to you for any other rights tomorrow, so that your obligations get negated when erasure comes, that you inform those 20 departments as well. So moment you share it with another person, you can absolutely ask that entity in your contract, internal contract, that take a fresh consent.
Suppose we are a government entity. Suppose we have this concept of golden data where all the citizens and their records will be put in the golden data. Instead of going department wise, can we say that the government of Maharashtra takes the consent of the individuals for government purposes, and government of Maharashtra becomes the
you can do that, but then government of every time the problem that will come is when you look at the penalty part, when you look at all these things. So there are a lot of exclusions in the law which says that you don't have to take a consent and any other thing except the security if it has been used for providing relief funds and things. उसके लिए आपको consent की कोई मायने नहीं है, आप उससे कैसे consent लोगे? मतलब एक से तो आप consent नहीं लोगे इन चीजों के लिए, तो उसमें ना उन्होंने exemptions दिए लॉ में, तो वो exempted categories है, तो वो वाला डेटा तो आप वहाँ पे मेन उसमें रख दो, बट उसका जैसे ही नया यूज करते हो किसी और पर्पस के लिए, तब आपकी प्रॉब्लम आएगी. और प्रॉब्लम एक और है कि कल जाके अगर पेनल्टी इंपोज होती है तो फिर वो एक ही जगह पे पेनल्टी इंपोज होती है. When you make one pool and you say government of Maharashtra is the custodian of it, then government of Maharashtra का प्रॉब्लम ये है कि government of Maharashtra then becomes the the person who can be penalized, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want continuously that to happen. Because government of Maharashtra, whether it can be penalized or not, also you have to look into it, because it won't come as a data fiduciary per se. But what you can do is you can have one data lake, but the moment you take that data, when you utilize it, you can freshly take consent, or you can utilize it if it's not for the beneficiary purposes, for the public schemes or running of those beneficiary schemes or any of those areas. So those are exempted categories. For legal, it is an exempted categories. For the law enforcement, there is an exemption. So there are some exemptions, but that is only restricted to that specific exemption. The moment that data is used for any other purpose is where consent is again very much required. Otherwise, you can continuously take and have it with government of Maharashtra and keep using it only if it's for the benefits and those beneficiary schemes that you put it across. Otherwise not. The other exemption that comes is if you are a notified agency or a state department, then you have an exemption. Like for example, SEBI is exempted. Why? Because it's and a quasi-judicial as well. It passes orders. But any other thing that it does, it will not be. So I'm saying you can't have a blanket exemption per se and make that entity do whatever they want to do it. Like IRDAI is a exempted one. Why? Because it doesn't use anything for its own purpose. There's no commercial angle to it, nothing. But at the same time, there are some agencies which are part of IRDAI, like IIB. IIB is not a regulated entity or a statutory entity or anything. That will be included in the law, and same applicability of data fiduciary which will be for others. That will continue. Yes, sir.
There is concept of government as a whole in DPDP. That's what
I know, I understood that part, but I don't want to give the exemption to you all to think that today that, oh, let's sleep peacefully, we are part of the government and we are exempted. Because there is a layer and layer to it, and only that specific part is exempted.
Because for implementation and you will need that thing.
Yes, you will need it.
Otherwise it is very difficult. So we need government as a whole concept that is there, and it needs to be implemented with this type of golden data or something, consent driven one mechanism, one platform, which will be used by everybody, and that will be shared. So that will be required for our case.
But if you can do that, it's a beautiful idea that you have. If you have a process driven, that one place and one custodian, which is your government of Maharashtra or any department that you put it across, and you get them notified. Now that's the department where any department who wants to have any beneficiary scheme or anything that has to be done, even when it comes to research and other things which have to be put across, that कौन सी नई पॉलिसी निकाले, उसके लिए भी तो बहुत सारा रिसर्च डेटा चाहिए होता है ना, किस एरिया में पानी का कमी होता है, किस एरिया में किस टाइम पे बहुत ज्यादा बीमारी आती है, किस टाइप के, then you bring in those kind of schemes and put in that kind of influx. For traffic data also you need lot of information as to what has to be done where. Data is very important for all your departments to practically have new schemes coming up or policies or new decisions that you want to take it across. Have it the moment it is not directly linked to personal data of an individual, your asset is exempted. But the moment you're doing this, have your systems in place. Like I can have a private discussion with you on this, that how you can have one data lake, wahan se every department can take it, but let there be a proper record keeping of it. The moment you don't have a record keeping, you will practically continue inculcating punishments for something that you have not done it. And जब तक वो liability नहीं आएगी, फिर से वही होगा कि आपके डिपार्टमेंट में 5 कंसल्टेंट है, जिसको आप बोलोगे पेन ड्राइव में डेटा ले जा, क्योंकि आपकी तो कोई लाइबिलिटी नहीं है, फिर मैं ले जाके कुछ और करूंगी. That's why I was not giving the direct answer to. So I will have a discussion on this, how you can have this robust mechanism in place, so that it becomes easy for you to navigate and DPDP doesn't become a impediment to your working. That I can practically have that discussion, but Seriously, do not think of, I don't want to scare you, but do not think of DPDP and you as an exempted entity. No, there's exemption for specific tasks, but not exemption as a whole. Like, again giving you one more same example, मैं नीचे आई थी तो मंत्रालय तो आपकी उसमें आ जाएगा ना, आप बोलोगे मंत्रालय को तो कैसे आप सो कर सकते हो, पर वो जो नीचे मंत्रालय में आपका बैठा हुआ है जो मेरे डेटा लेता है, वो एंटिटी आपकी नहीं है, वो कोई प्राइवेट एंटिटी है, तो आपकी लाइबिलिटी नहीं बनती है तो उसकी भी लाइबिलिटी नहीं बनती है, तो मेरा तो चला गया आधार, फिर कौन सी प्रिवेसी की आप बात कर रहे हो और कौन सी सिक्योरिटी की आप बात कर रहे हो? That's where you might get exempted when it comes to consent, when it comes to certain layer. But when it comes to security and everything, we need to have the transparency. For that, you need to have an accountability in place and systems in place. Okay. If any question, I can answer that, and then I will continue with my. How much time I have left? Done? Okay. So just give me one. Okay, ask your question, and then I'll repeat.
You did mention that we have to store a data. Like for example, in HRMS, we're liable to store a data for 7 years, right? So how do we make sure that we take consent of the employees at the planning level? And second is the disaster recovery centers, as per this act, should they be in India only?
No, okay. So when I talk about localization, जो पहले वाले law में था, complete localization. Now this law doesn't tell you about localization. It says data can go anywhere in the world, provided government has got the power that it can blacklist any country. Like for example, कल जाके पाकिस्तान से लड़ाई हो रही है, तो हम पाकिस्तान को blacklist कर देंगे, तो हमारा डेटा पाकिस्तान नहीं जा सकता है. अगर हम कल जाके चाइना को blacklist करते हैं, किसी भी country को blacklist करें, जिनके साथ में भी हमारा negotiation नहीं हो रहा है, and they are not having that same level of reciprocity, and we do some actions into it at the government level. That country cannot hold the data if it's blacklisted. But you can practically share your data anywhere in the world now, जो पहले नहीं था. But this is also not absolute. You have got sectoral laws. 2019 or 17, you got an RBI circular which says that no fintech or banks or any other financial institutions can have a data outside India. उसमें भी partial है कि कुछ data जाकर process होके वापस आ सकता है. So there are 3 categories of it, and they have put across. I will have to comply with my sectoral guideline. And over and above comes the DPDP Act. In the conflict, sectoral guidelines addition to DPDP Act is what will be there. So you might have your own norms in place which says that this data cannot go. Like आपका जो Official Secret Act है, वो बोलता है गवर्नमेंट का ये जो स्पेसिफिक डेटा है ये बाहर नहीं जाना चाहिए इंडिया के, ये बाहर के सर्वर्स पे नहीं रह सकता है, तो वो आपका कंटिन्यू रहेगा. Just because DPDP Act says that there is no localization doesn't mean there is no localization. It's over and above what your sectoral requirements are when it comes to everything, when it comes to retention, deletion, when it comes to data localization or cross-border data transfer part of it. But you need to have again systems in place, because if you're sharing it with somebody outside, you have to tell them that you have to abide with our Indian laws, specifics to ABC, which is your erasure, recall and XYZ, because again you will have a difficulty in enforcing it with them. Because when you say that you have not implemented, you have to have a contract in place that laws of the Indian laws will be governed, Indian Arbitration Act will be governed if you don't flaw with it. So that the fight happens in India, you don't have to go Europe and fight with them and have 2 jurisdictions as a play. Now let's say you're not in just India, doesn't apply to actually government entities, but if you're there in 5 different countries, 5 different laws are applicable on you. So you need to have an understanding of, let's say you're in Australia, you are in CCPA, you are in Europe. GDPR, कैलिफोर्निया का CCPA, ऑस्ट्रेलिया का लॉ, इंडिया का लॉ, सब एप्लीकेबल हो जाएंगे. तो सबके लॉज देखने होंगे, वहां पे सबके कंसेंट के मैकेनिज्म्स देखने होंगे और सबको इंप्लीमेंट करना होगा. Though I don't think so, that's where we come in play. Okay, apart from this, the law is also very beautiful when it comes to children. I don't know, so many people did not have much focus onto it, but it has got good provision. I'll just take 1 more minute on the children and I'm done. Children, it has got specific provision. It says that as child, it cannot give you the consent. So it says child as a definition of 18, which is admissible 18. It says a child coming on your platform or a child data that you're using it, you cannot use it without a verifiable consent of a parent or a legal guardian. Not local guardian, legal guardian. A verifiable consent का मतलब ये है कि जैसे मैं कल थिएटर में गई और वहाँ पे लिखा था अंडर एज का एप्लीकेबिलिटी नहीं है, उसके नीचे के बच्चे नहीं जा सकते हैं. अब एज जो भी होता है वो यूए. बट देयर आर 2 people I take along and we have gone inside. But the person who's checking the tickets did not bother to check. अब अंदर पुलिस आई है तो वो किसको पकड़ेगी? वो थिएटर वाले को, ओनर। क्यों? क्योंकि उसको लॉ इंप्लीमेंट करना था कि अंडर एज के बच्चे इस पिक्चर को नहीं देख सकते, तो उनको ना जाने दे। किसी पब में अगर कोई 17 साल का बच्चा मिला है ड्रिंक करते हुए, तो पब ओनर्स को पकड़ लेते हैं। बहुत सारे हमारे ड्रंकन टाइप में जब पीछे पीछे सीसीटीवी देखते हैं तो उनको भी पकड़ लेते हैं। दे ऑल्सो गो बिहाइंड द बार्स। व्हाई? बिकॉज लॉ बोलता है कि आप किसी को, बच्चे को आप ड्रिंक नहीं दे सकते हैं इतने साल तक की उम्र तक। तो उसकी लायबिलिटी किसकी होती है? पब ओनर की। वही लायबिलिटी उसने यहाँ पे भी लाई है कि एज अ प्लेटफॉर्म तुम कैसे चेक करोगे मुझे नहीं पता, बट वेरीफाइबल कंसेंट तुम्हारी होनी चाहिए। कल जाके अगर कोई बच्चा पकड़ा गया जिसकी आपने डेटा को उनको यूज किया है, उसको सर्विसेज दी है, उसकी कंसेंट के बिना उसके डेटा का यूज किया है, उसकी कंसेंट मतलब उसके माँ बाप की या फिर उसके लीगल गार्डियन की कंसेंट के बिना, तो यू विल बी पुट बिहाइंड द बार्स। सो वेरीफाइबल इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट। यही एलिमेंट उन्होंने PWD, दैट इज पीपल विद डिसेबिलिटी पे भी डाला है, जहां पे डिसेबिलिटी वाले पीपल हु कांट गिव द कंसेंट, इनकेपेबल टू गिव अ कंसेंट, उन्होंने डिफाइन किया उसको, उनके ऊपर भी एप्लीकेबल है। अब ये वाली जो कंसेंट है उसकी 200 करोड़ तक की पेनल्टी है। हाँ, तो 18 साल के नीचे का कोई भी अगर डेटा यूज करते हैं तो थोड़ी सी फेरबदल जल्दी से ले आए उसमें, बाकी तो ठीक है। ये 200 करोड़ तक की है। प्लस वो बोलता है कि लॉ अगर आपको दे भी दे कंसेंट, तो बिहेवियरल एनालिटिक्स या फिर किसी बच्चे को ऐसी कुछ चीजें दिखाना जिससे उसकी मानसिकता पे इम्पैक्ट आ सके, उसकी अपब्रिंगिंग पे, मेंटल उस पर इम्पैक्ट हो जाए, तो भी ये 200 करोड़ वाला ब्रैकेट उस पर आ जाएगा। तो कंसेंट का कोई मायना नहीं है अगर आप कोई ऐसी चीज उन्हें दिखाए जिससे उनकी वेलबींग, उनकी मेंटल वेलबींग या उनकी जो बिहेवियरल एनालिटिक्स आप करते हो वो हो। तो अगर कोई आपने जैसे छोटे बच्चों का स्कूल है, अब वो स्कूल में आजकल सब कुछ सीसीटीवी कैमरास लगा दिए, प्लस जो बस या छोटी गाड़ी ड्रॉप करती है उसमें भी कैमरास लगा दिए। सबके एक्सेस सारे मम्मी पापा को है। आई डोंट नो वेदर ऑल ऑफ यू आर इन दैट दिस थिंग इनटू इट, बट नाउ एवरीबडी हैज दैट। तो विल दैट कम इन बिहेवियरल एनालिटिक्स? यस। बट इज दैट कार्व आउट? यस, देयर इज अ कार्व आउट। बट वो ये बोलता है कि वो सिर्फ उसी चीज के लिए लगाया है कि वो वहां से वहां छोड़ने के लिए जो सिक्योरिटी चाहिए, उस डेटा का जैसे ही कोई और इस्तेमाल हुआ वो 200 करोड़ की पेनल्टी तक चला जाएगा। एंड दैट डेटा कैन नॉट बी स्टोर्ड। There's a timeline to that storage of data. You have to store it that part, and then it gets over. So let's say as a school or as a department, health department or whatever department, आपने वो CCTV कैमरा लगाया सिक्योरिटी बेनिफिट के लिए, ताकि कोई मिसहैप ना हो कल किसी बच्चे के साथ में, और माँ बाप को भी पता रहे या हमको पता रहे। बट अगर वो एक्सेस आपके किसी और इंसान ने किसी और चीज के लिए ले लिया है, तो उससे आप you're looking at 200 करोड़ तक का पेनल्टी। तो have systems in place if you're doing all these things. Have verifiable consent in place. That's it with your DPDP Act when it comes to obligations. Security के लिए 250 करोड़ तक की पेनल्टी है। सिक्योरिटी में उन्होंने कोई अच्छा सा एक्स्ट्रा नहीं बोला है। उन्होंने बोला है आप ई-कॉमर्स प्लेटफॉर्म हो, आप एक छोटी सी एंटिटी हो, आप एक मॉम एंड पॉप शॉप हो, एक लॉ फर्म हो छोटा सा, या कुछ भी हो, आप अपने हिसाब से सिक्योरिटी लगाएं। मतलब आप ताला लगाएं, नहीं लगाएं, किस टाइप का ताला लगाएं, इट इज ऑल अप टू यू। बट टुमारो इफ यू आर कॉट इन द इवेंट ऑफ डेटा ब्रीच is where you have to showcase that you had the reasonable security measures in place or standards implemented in your organization. That's where that up to 250 crore can be quantified to lower amount. उसके बाद में और mechanisms दिए हैं कि punishment को quantify करने का mechanism ये है कि let's say मैंने best security measures लगाए. It has been said that every entity will be breached. Cyber attacks are there and they will be there. You cannot escape. Is how you navigate and mitigate is what the key is. So let's say I've got the security measures. I will show that I've got the security measures. How quick I was in patching that security part. How quick I was in telling the person whose data has been breached. Like these 40 people got their passwords, their temporary ID, their let's say banking details, their health records with me all breached. I will call them or I will mail them or I will SMS them. And I will tell them कि आपका ये बाहर हो गया है. If you get any kind of such calls or anything, please change your passwords. Please be aware. You know, I make them aware about it. Is also one of the measures कि you have done all these 10 things. Despite that, now if something has happened, the board can practically go with zero breach or little higher breach. This is, we don't have data protection board yet. It's formulated, but it's yet not out. But we have got different boards in the world where we have seen same kind of ways of putting across what penalty can be imposed, so it can be a good example for you. This money now will go to Consolidated Fund of India, which Data Protection Board gets it. If you give a frivolous complaint, 10,000 rupees of a penalty can be imposed upon you if you continue with the frivolous complaints, unnecessary just to have something into it. That's your entire DPDP Act. Thank you.
much, ma'am, for those incisive reflections. What you have unpacked today is something every officer in this room needs to sit with. We are not just administrators of services. Under this Act, we are the data fiduciary, and that is a legal responsibility and not a technical one. As we formally close today's session, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who made it possible. To Ms. Khushbu Jain for a session that was as sharp as it was practical. You gave us not just knowledge, but clarity, and that is a rare gift. To Srimati Viradha ma'am, ACS GAD, we thank you so much for the gracious felicitation, and to each and every one of you in this room for your presence, your attention, and your engagement. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra.